The night in space was always the same, endless darkness filled with stars. For the Galactic Empire, it was just another calm shift on the border stations. Patrol ships drifted lazily, their crews expecting nothing but silence. The borders had been quiet for decades. No major threat, no challenge worth remembering. But this night was different. Something stirred in the dark. In the border command station of the sector, young Officer Kiro leaned back in his chair. His job was simple: monitor the long-range scanners and log any passing freighters or smugglers. Most of the time the signals were boring, just old cargo haulers or drifting wrecks. He often thought the job was more punishment than honor. But when the console beeped with a deep warning tone, his heart skipped a beat. At first he thought it was another glitch. The long-range arrays were old. Sometimes they gave strange readings. Still, the signal did not vanish. It grew clearer, heavier, stronger. His eyes widened as the numbers climbed. Power readings like this had never been seen before in this sector. He called to his superior with a shaky voice. "Commander, we have something on the edge of the grid. It is big, too big for a normal ship." The commander, an older veteran named Relka, frowned as he walked over. He glanced at the readings, his face turning pale. The energy spikes looked like engines, but not like any design known to the Empire. The size estimate stretched larger and larger until the numbers no longer made sense. "Run a cross-check," Relka ordered. Trying to sound calm, the computers hummed, projecting the signal onto the main screen. The room grew silent. Officers leaned forward in shock. A massive object drifted into their space. Its energy core burned like a small sun. Its armor reflected the sensor waves with defiance. "It cannot be a freighter," whispered one of the junior officers. "It is armed. Look at those power clusters. Those are weapon mounts." The commander's voice dropped to a low growl. "No ship in this sector has that kind of firepower. No ship in the Empire has this design." Panic rippled across the room. Each officer whispered a word they thought was long dead. A word from stories told in fear: human. Long ago, records spoke of a species that fought wars not with numbers but with monsters of steel. Humanity. A race that was supposed to be scattered, broken, forgotten. The Empire's historians had dismissed the old war tales as myths. Yet the silhouette on the scanner was all too real. The officers exchanged nervous glances. Kiro felt his throat go dry. The ship was alone, but it carried the presence of an entire fleet. Its path was direct, steady, moving deeper into the sector as if it feared nothing. No hesitation, no coded transmission, only silence. The commander slammed his fist on the console. "Contact Central Command now. Tell them we have an unidentified warship entering restricted space." "Highest alert." The comms officer scrambled, transmitting the urgent code. Across the stars, alarms would soon echo. Fleets would mobilize. Leaders would wake from their slumber in panic. But here, in the lonely border outpost, the first eyes of the Empire stared in terror at the approach of a single vessel. Cairo dared to ask, "Sir, what if it is human?" Relka did not answer at first. He only watched the growing signal on the screen. The ship was still far away, but its aura felt close, oppressive, suffocating. Finally, he whispered, "Then we are already too late." The room filled with a cold silence. Everyone knew what that meant if the old stories were true. If this was a human battleship, then nothing in the Empire could match it. They had heard of fleets crushed, worlds silenced, enemies begging for mercy, and now that terror was in their space. The station trembled as the ship's shadow crossed the edge of their scanners. It was like a mountain drifting through the stars. The crew could feel their own insignificance. Their petty weapons and thin armor would never stand against such a beast. Still, duty demanded action. Relka straightened his back. "Prepare a probe launch. Get me visual confirmation." The probe shot into the void, its tiny engines glowing faintly. Minutes passed like hours. Everyone leaned closer to the main screen. The probe's camera flickered. Static filled the display. Then the image cleared, and gasps echoed through the room. There it was, a warship unlike any other. Thick armor plating like layers of stone. Guns lined across its hull. Cannons larger than destroyers. Its design was simple, brutal, efficient. No wasted space, no weakness. The young officer whispered, "It looks ancient." And alive, the commander's hands trembled. He had fought in dozens of campaigns, faced pirates, rebels, and rival empires, but never had his soul felt such weight. "That," he said, voice breaking, "is not a myth. "That is a human battleship." No one spoke after that. The silence of the room was heavy. Even the computers seemed to hesitate. The great vessel drifted closer, not rushing, not hiding. It came like a storm, slow but unstoppable. Alarms blared across the outpost as emergency codes spread to nearby fleets. But in their hearts, the crew already knew the truth. The Empire had not been prepared. The legends had returned. Humanity was not gone. And tonight, the first step of their return had entered the Empire's sector. Whispers of humanity. The signal from the border station spread faster than light across the Empire's networks. Command centers lit up with red warnings. Encrypted alerts carried the same dreadful words. Unidentified human battleship detected in the capital world. The Imperial High Council gathered in the Grand Chamber. The towering pillars and golden walls could not hide the fear that filled the air. Generals, admirals, ministers all sat with pale faces as the first reports arrived. The Emperor himself entered, his long cloak trailing behind him. His voice cut through the noise, cold and sharp. "Explain this to me. How can a single ship cause such panic?" The Chief of Intelligence stood, his hands trembling as he placed an old holorecord on the table. The projection flickered to life, showing ancient battles, crude images yet powerful. Human warships tearing apart fleets 3 times their size. "Your Majesty," the officer whispered, "our archives speak of them, the humans. They built ships not for numbers but for destruction. Legends claim one of their battleships could level entire armadas. We believed these were myths, old stories to frighten children, but now, one of those ships is in our space." Gasps filled the chamber. Some officials muttered in disbelief. Others clutched their robes as if trying to keep steady. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. "You mean to tell me the tales were true?" The Admiral of the Western Fleet spoke, his voice heavy with unease. "We always laughed at those stories. Majesty, we thought humanity was scattered, broken, gone, but the readings match. There is no denying it. That vessel carries the same design, the same impossible power." One of the younger ministers slammed the table. "Nonsense! They are only one ship. We are the Empire. We command thousands of vessels. We cannot tremble because of old fairy tales." Yet even as he shouted, his voice cracked with doubt, because deep down even he knew the stories. Every academy cadet heard them whispered at night. Tales of how humans fought with fury, how their warships were called monsters of steel, and how entire species vanished after facing them. The Emperor leaned back in his chair, his golden eyes fixed on the hollow image. "Tell me, what do we know of their kind? If they survived, where are they now?" The intelligence officer shook his head. "We know little, Majesty, only fragments. Most records were erased after the old wars. Deliberately removed, but some whispers remain. They say humanity never needed an empire. They needed only their fleets. Each ship was a kingdom, each captain a ruler of war. If this one battleship still sails, then perhaps others wait in the dark." The chamber froze at those words. The thought of not one but many of these ships drifting unseen across the galaxy was unbearable. Across the capital, fear spread in secret. Soldiers whispered in barracks. Merchants hushed their voices in markets. Ordinary citizens heard rumors of a ship older and deadlier than anything known. The word human spread like wildfire. Some laughed nervously, some prayed. Some locked their doors at night, though no enemy was near. In the military academies, instructors who once mocked the human myths grew silent. They remembered the forbidden scrolls, the tales of soldiers who swore never to face humans again. Now cadets whispered to each other, "If one ship has returned, will more follow?" The Emperor stood, his cloak sweeping behind him. "Enough, we will not show weakness. Send fleets intercepted. If it dares trespass in our space, it will burn." But though his words were strong, his hands gripped the throne with hidden tension. For he too remembered the stories. He too knew what it meant, one ship against many. And still the outcome was always the same. Back in the border station, Officer Kiro sat frozen at his console. He could not hear the debates of the capital, but he could feel the weight of history pressing on his shoulders. The ship on his screen was no illusion, no trick, it was real. A warship built by the hands of humanity. Moving closer and closer, his commander, Relka, whispered as if speaking to himself. The galaxy laughed at them, called them primitive, weak, forgotten, but humans. Humans never forgot war, and now the Empire will remember them too. The officers around him shifted nervously. Some prayed quietly. Some kept their eyes locked on the screen. The silence of the void outside seemed louder than any storm. Every passing second brought the human battleship deeper into the Empire's heart. Rumors grew into fear, fear grew into panic, and panic became truth for the first time in centuries. The Empire trembled not before a fleet, not before an empire, but before a single ship. First visual contact. The probe drifted through the void like a fragile insect. Its engines glowed faintly as it carried the eyes of the Empire toward the silent intruder. Every officer in the border station held their breath. The screen flickered with static, then cleared, and for the first time they saw it. The image froze the room. A colossal warship filled the screen. Its hull was a wall of steel, layered in thick plates that seemed ancient yet unbreakable. Along its sides rested weapons that dwarfed entire destroyers. Each cannon was a tower, each missile bay the size of a city block. The ship's design was not elegant like the Empire's fleets. It was brutal, purposeful, and alive with power. A whisper broke the silence. "It's real." Kiro felt his chest tighten. He had seen thousands of ships during his training, but none carried this weight. This was not just a machine, it was a symbol. It radiated strength in every line of its armored body. The stars behind it looked dim, as if its presence consumed the very light. Commander Relka stepped closer to the screen, his hand trembling. "That is not a story. That is not a ghost, that is a human battleship." The younger officers exchanged terrified glances. Their academy lessons flooded back. The myths of ships that stood alone against entire armadas. The warnings carved into history but dismissed as legends. Now those legends stared them in the face. The probe's camera shifted, revealing strange markings etched into the hull. Not like the banners of the Empire. These were scars, long burns, impact craters sealed with crude but effective repairs. The ship was old, scarred by countless battles. Yet still it moved. Still it breathed power. One officer muttered, "It has survived wars we cannot even imagine." Relka nodded grimly. "And it carries those wars upon its skin." The probe continued its scan. Sensors read impossible values. The energy core burned hotter than any reactor known. Its shield signatures were layered, overlapping in ways the Empire could not understand. It was like peering into the abyss, trying to measure a storm with a cup. Suddenly, the ship moved, not fast but steady, deliberate. The probe caught the subtle flare of its engines. For such a massive structure to glide with such grace was terrifying. It ignored the probe completely, as though the Empire's technology was beneath its notice. The image zoomed closer to the ship's prow. There at the very front was a nameplate carved into metal. The language was human, unknown to most in the room, but the letters carried weight even without translation. The meaning was clear. This vessel had a name. "A soul," Kiro whispered. "It feels like it's watching us." Even through the screen, his words were not dismissed. For everyone in that room felt the same. The ship did not transmit a signal, yet its silence screamed louder than any declaration. It was not here to ask, it was here to remind. Relka turned to his crew. "Send the image to Central Command. Every fleet must see this, let them know what has entered our sector." The comms officer obeyed, but his hands shook as the signal was sent across the stars. The first confirmed image of a living myth began to spread. In military bunkers, in academies, in secret intelligence halls, leaders watched and trembled. The whispers grew. Humanity had returned. Far away in the capital, the High Council received the image. When the giant steel hull filled their chamber screens, silence fell. One minister fainted, another dropped his data pad. The Emperor himself leaned forward, eyes narrowing, for even he could not deny what stood before them. "This is no ordinary vessel," he muttered. "This is a warning carved in metal." Back in the border station, the probe's feed suddenly cut out. Static filled the screen. The officers jumped, fearing the worst. But the human battleship had not fired. It had simply turned its bulk slightly, and the fragile probe had been crushed by the sheer pressure of its passing. The silence in the room was unbearable. The crew looked to Relka for guidance, but he only stared at the last frozen frame of the warship. His voice was low, filled with a dread he could not hide. "One ship, and already we feel powerless," Kiro swallowed hard. His thoughts raced with fear. If one ship could paralyze the Empire with only its presence, what would happen if more appeared? How many of these ancient monsters still drifted in the void, waiting? As the battleship continued deeper into the sector, the Empire's pride cracked. For centuries they had believed themselves untouchable, their fleets supreme. But that belief shattered the moment their eyes truly saw the human warship. It was not just steel, it was memory. It was vengeance carried across stars, and it had chosen to return. Panic across the Empire. The moment the image of the human battleship reached Central Command, chaos erupted. Officers shouted over one another. Alarms blared across tactical screens. Messages poured in from border fleets demanding orders. Panic moved faster than light, spreading from one star system to the next, on the capital world. The Imperial High Council sat in stunned silence as the warship's image hovered above them. The Emperor's face was carved from stone, but even his eyes betrayed unease. He had ruled for decades. He had crushed rebellions, destroyed rival empires, and watched fleets burn at his command. Yet never had he seen one ship bend the will of the galaxy like this. Admiral Vera broke the silence. Her voice sharp, "We must intercept immediately. If it advances deeper, we risk losing entire sectors. Assemble a strike force at once." The Minister of Strategy shook his head, sweat dripping from his brow. "No, we cannot provoke it. The archives are clear. Humanity's weapons defy reason. If we strike and fail, the panic will become unstoppable." The room erupted in argument. Some demanded diplomacy. Others demanded fire. The Emperor finally raised his hand and silence returned. His voice echoed through the chamber. "Tell me, is this ship alone or is it the first of many?" No one could answer. The intelligence officer only lowered his head. "Majesty, we do not know. It could be a scout, or it could be the first of a fleet. The old records were erased. We have no way to know how many ships like this remain." The Emperor's jaw tightened. "Then we must prepare for the worst." Across the Empire, fear seeped into every layer of society. In academies, cadets whispered the name human with trembling voices. In marketplaces, merchants closed early. Speaking of omens and curses on distant colonies, citizens locked themselves indoors, watching the skies as if expecting the warship to descend upon them at any moment. Prophets rose in the streets, shouting that the return of humanity was the return of doom. Others called them saviors, warriors who had come to punish the arrogance of the Empire. The whispers became louder than the Empire's broadcasts, spreading faster than official denials. Meanwhile, the military scrambled. Entire fleets were ordered into formation, but discipline cracked under the weight of fear. Some captains refused to approach the sector, claiming mechanical failures. Others quietly moved their ships farther from the human vessel's projected path. No one wanted to be the first to face the legend made flesh. In the border station, Officer Kiro watched the reports flood in. He had never seen the Empire so divided, so afraid. His commander Relka paced behind him, his face shadowed with dread. "We are witnessing history, Kiro." "And it is history that bleeds," Kiro asked softly. "Do you think the Council will try to talk with them?" Relka gave a bitter laugh. "Talk? The Empire does not talk, it demands, it conquers, but this time, Kiro, this time they may find themselves begging instead." As the battleship drifted deeper into the sector, the Empire's response grew frantic. Scout ships were dispatched to shadow it, but one by one their signals went silent. The human warship did not fire. It did not chase, it simply moved forward, and the scouts vanished as if swallowed by the void. In the capital, the Emperor convened a private council with his most trusted advisors. His words were measured, but his tone was sharp. "We must assume this ship is here for a reason. No vessel of this scale drifts without purpose. If humanity has chosen to reveal itself now, then the galaxy is about to change." One of his generals spoke with a trembling voice. "Majesty, if they have more than one ship, then we cannot win. Not with all the fleets in the galaxy combined." The Emperor's silence was more terrifying than words. He finally whispered, "Then our empire trembles on the edge of ruin." Back in the academies, instructors tried to calm cadets, but their own voices cracked. They remembered the forbidden lessons, the tales of empires erased in nights of fire. The human ships were not fleets, they were storms, and one storm was now upon them. In the outer colonies, people began to riot. Some demanded evacuation. Others shouted that resistance was suicide. The governors tried to keep order, but the fear of one ship moved faster than law, faster than reason, and in the heart of the galaxy, the Emperor sat alone in his chamber, staring at the frozen image of the warship. Its scars, its silence, its unstoppable presence. He whispered a truth no one in the Empire dared to say aloud. "One ship and already my empire shakes. If more follow, Then all we built will crumble like dust. The panic of the Empire was no longer whispers. It was thunder, rolling across every world. Every heart beat with the same question. How could one ship undo an empire? And yet the answer was already clear. Humanity had returned, and their silence was louder than any war cry. The test of strength. The order came from the Emperor himself. A fleet of 300 ships would intercept the intruder. The command was clear. Show the galaxy that the Empire was not afraid. From the shipyards and bases, cruisers, destroyers, and carriers launched into the void, their engines burned like a storm of fire. Together they formed a wall of steel, meant to remind the people that the Empire's power was unshakable. Yet behind the bravado there was fear. Every officer remembered the image of the human battleship. Every captain wondered if today would be their last. In the command ship Imperial Glory, Admiral Vera stood tall. Her face was carved from stone, but her heart pounded beneath her armor. She addressed her officers with steady words. We face only one ship, remember who we are. We are the Empire, and no ghost of the past will undo us. Her words rallied the crews. Cheers echoed through the comms, but those cheers sounded thin, hollow like whispers in a storm. Far away, the human battleship drifted, calm, silent, steady. It did not change course. It did not speed up, it simply advanced, as if the wall of ships before it were nothing more than dust. The fleets locked weapons. Missile bays opened. Energy cannons charged. Drones and fighters swarmed into formation like angry insects. The space between the Empire and the human warship became a killing ground waiting to be lit. Admiral Vera gave the order. Transmit warning, last chance. Identify yourself or be destroyed. The comms repeated the signal once, twice, a dozen times. But the human battleship gave no answer. Only silence, only the slow, dreadful hum of its engines as it pressed forward. On the bridge of the Imperial Glory, tension cracked like lightning. An officer turned to Vera, his voice trembling. Admiral, it ignores us, it does not care. Vera's jaw tightened. Then we will make it care, all ships. Fire. The void erupted. Thousands of beams, missiles, and torpedoes screamed across space. The darkness lit up like a newborn star. Explosions thundered against the hull of the intruder. Clouds of fire and smoke filled the screen. For a moment, hope returned. Officers shouted in triumph, believing the threat destroyed. But then, as the flames cleared, the image revealed the truth. The human battleship still moved, unstoppable, unbroken. The weapons of 300 ships had scarred its armor. But it was still whole. Its shields flickered like storms, but did not fall. Its cannons began to glow. The first blast came like a hammer from the gods. A beam of light lanced across the void. A destroyer vanished in a single strike, vaporized in silence. Then the ship turned slightly, and its broadside roared. The Empire's cruisers fell apart as if they were paper toys. Whole squadrons vanished in seconds. The battleship fired not rapidly, but deliberately, each shot a sentence. Each blast a judgment. Admiral Vera gripped the railing, her face pale. Hold formation, do not falter. But already panic spread across the comms. Captains screamed as their ships burned, fighters scattered in chaos. No formation could withstand such power. Kira watched the battle unfold from the border station. His heart thudded in horror. He whispered, 300 ships, and they are nothing. Relka's voice was heavy. This is no test, this is a lesson. Back in the fleet. The Imperial Glory shook as a blast tore through its shields. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Officers scrambled. Smoke filled the bridge. Still, Vera refused to retreat. We fight until the last, she growled. But the battleship did not even target her directly. It moved with calm precision, destroying carriers, shredding frigates, breaking the fleet's spine piece by piece. In less than an hour, the proud wall of steel became a graveyard. Ships burned, wreckage drifted, voices went silent. The survivors fled without orders. Engines flared as captains abandoned the fight. They no longer cared for honor or command. They only wanted to live. The human battleship did not chase them. It simply advanced, slow, steady, unstoppable. On the capital world, the High Council watched in silence. Their faces drained of all color. Ministers who had mocked the threat now stared in horror. The Emperor's fists tightened on the arms of his throne. His voice low, filled with disbelief. One ship has broken the might of the Empire. Admiral Vera's final transmission echoed across the comms before her ship was silenced. Her voice was proud, but trembling. They are not myths, they are not gone. Humanity has returned, and we are nothing before them. Her words became truth, etched into the minds of every soul who heard them. The test of strength was over, and the Empire had failed. The message delivered. The graveyard of ships drifted in silence. The void was filled with wreckage, broken engines, and shattered hulls. Fires burned across empty space, then faded into glowing embers. The proud fleet of the Empire was gone, wiped away as if it had never existed. The lone human battleship moved through the wreckage without pause. It did not gloat. It did not chase the survivors. It simply advanced steady and calm. Its engines rumbled like distant thunder. A soundless warning carried on the void. On the border station, Officer Kiro stared at the destruction. His voice broke. 300 ships. Gone just like that. Commander Relka's eyes were locked on the silent vessel. His face pale, his voice heavy. It was not a battle, Kiro, it was a message. And now we wait for the rest of it, the comms officer suddenly gasped. Signal, I'm reading a transmission, it's not ours. It's coming from them. The room froze. No one breathed. For the first time, the human warship had spoken. The speakers crackled, a voice filled the chamber. Calm, deep, steady. It was human, every word carried weight. This is only one ship, the voice said. Do not test our patience. The words were simple, but they fell like hammers. Each officer felt their chest tighten. The tone was not rage, not anger. It was colder, it was warning. A reminder of power that did not need to shout. Across the Empire, as the message spread, leaders trembled. In the High Council chamber, the Emperor listened in silence. His ministers whispered in terror. Some wanted to surrender. Others wanted to hide. None had answers. The Emperor clenched his fists. His pride fought against the fear gnawing at his soul. Yet even he could not deny the truth in those words. If one ship could annihilate his fleet, then humanity's patience was all that kept his empire alive. On distant colonies, people gathered in fear, listening to the broadcast. Some wept, others prayed. The word human was no longer a myth. It was a shadow stretching across every world, a presence that could not be stopped. Back in the border station, Kira whispered, They spoke as if we are children, as if we are insects. Relka nodded slowly. And maybe to them, we are. The transmission ended, silence returned. The battleship continued its path deeper into the sector, ignoring all who watched. It had no need to fire again, its message was enough. The Emperor gathered his closest generals in secret. His voice was sharp, though his hands trembled. They want us to fear them. They want us to know they are not gone. What do we do? One general answered, his voice hollow, Majesty, there is nothing we can do. We cannot stop them. We can only obey. Another tried to sound braver. Perhaps it was only a warning. Perhaps they will leave, but even he did not believe his words. The battleship had delivered its message not through diplomacy, but through destruction. That was humanity's way. Speak with silence, then carve truth with fire. In the academies, instructors repeated the words to their students. This is only one ship. The phrase echoed like prophecy. A reminder that more might come, that worse might follow. Fear became tradition in a single night. On the streets of the capital, citizens carved the words into walls, painted them in blood, whispered them in their sleep. The message was burned into the heart of the Empire. No fleet could erase it, no propaganda could drown it. Humanity had spoken, and the galaxy listened. Kiro sat at his console, staring at the empty stars where the fleet once shone. He whispered to himself, one ship, only one ship, and yet it feels like the end of everything we know. Relka placed a hand on his shoulder. Not the end, Kiro. The beginning. The beginning of a galaxy that remembers what it tried to forget. As the human battleship drifted farther, the Empire's pride shattered like glass. For centuries they had ruled with fear. But now they knew a greater terror. Humanity had returned. Not with promises, but with proof. The message had been delivered, and its echo would never fade. The trembling Empire. The wreckage of the great fleet still drifted in silence, a graveyard stretching across the stars. The human battleship moved beyond it, slow and steady, its engines glowing like the heart of a storm. It gave no chase, it sought no trophies. It simply left its warning behind in the border station. Kiro sat motionless at his console. His eyes were fixed on the fading signal of the warship. He could not speak. He could only feel the weight pressing on his chest. He whispered finally, If this is what one ship can do, Then what will happen if more come? Commander Relka answered without turning his gaze. Then the galaxy will not survive. News of the battle spread faster than light. Every colony, every outpost, every world of the Empire trembled as they heard the truth. 300 ships had fallen, their wrecks scattered like ash. And the enemy was not a rival empire, not a rebellion, but humanity, a race thought long gone in the capital. The High Council sat in shameful silence. Ministers who once mocked the threat now refused to meet each other's eyes. The Emperor sat on his throne, his hands gripping the armrests with fury and fear. He had commanded fleets, broken empires, and ruled with iron will. Yet one human warship had undone him with a single gesture. The counselors whispered among themselves, "What if they send more? What if this was only a scout? What if humanity has returned in full force?" No one had answers. Only questions and fear. The message from the battleship still echoed in their minds. "This is only one ship, do not test our patience," the Emperor rose, his voice echoing in the chamber. "We must prepare, we must rebuild. We must find a way to defend against them." But even as he spoke, his generals knew the truth. There was no defense, no shield, no fleet, no weapon that could stand against what they had seen. Across the Empire, people reacted in different ways. Some fell into despair, whispering that the end of their rule was near. Others began to worship humanity like gods, carving symbols of warships into the walls of temples. Praying to the monsters of steel in the academies, instructors no longer mocked the old tales. Instead, they read them with trembling voices. The cadets listened in silence, knowing the stories were no longer myths but warnings. Every young officer carried the same thought. If humanity returns, we are powerless. On the border worlds, riots erupted, colonists demanded protection, governors gave empty promises, soldiers were stationed in the streets, but their eyes betrayed the same fear as the citizens. They had seen the images too, they had heard the message. They knew the Empire was not invincible. In the Emperor's private chamber, he stared at the frozen image of the battleship, its scars, its silence, its unshakable presence. He whispered into the shadows, "One ship, and already my empire trembles if more follow. Then everything we built will crumble into dust." The words haunted him. They haunted every ruler, every soldier, every citizen. The galaxy was vast, but suddenly it felt small, fragile, weak. Humanity had proven that size did not matter, numbers did not matter, only power, and they carried power beyond imagination. Kiro looked out the viewport of the border station. The stars burned quietly, but he no longer saw them the same. The beauty of the galaxy was gone, replaced by dread, for now he understood what the Empire had denied for centuries. Humanity had not been erased, humanity had waited, and now they had returned to remind the galaxy of their strength. Relka stood beside him, his voice calm but heavy. "Remember this night, Kiro, remember what you saw for one day. When the rest of their fleet comes, the galaxy will need witnesses who live to tell the story." Kiro nodded slowly. His hands trembled, but his eyes hardened. He knew the truth. No matter what the Empire did, no matter how many fleets they built, they would always fear the shadow of one name, humanity. And as the battleship disappeared into the dark, leaving only silence behind, the Empire shook in terror. The myths were no longer stories. The legends were no longer forgotten. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would tremble forever.